Aita for refusing to financially support my ex-wife's stepchildren. I was married to my ex-wife Laura for 10 years. Our relationship had its ups and downs like any marriage. But we eventually reached a point where we both knew that staying together wasn't the best thing for us or for Max. We divorced 3 years ago on reasonably amicable terms and established a joint custody agreement. Max spends 1 week with me and 1 week with his mom, and I paid child support that more than covers his needs. I've always honored that agreement without complaint, because Max deserves the best from both of us. 2 years ago, Laura started dating a man named Tom, who has 2 children from a previous relationship. Oven age 10 and Emma age 8. I didn't mind at all when their relationship became serious. In fact, I was happy that Laura found someone her happiness is good for Max. And as long as Tom treated my son well, I had no problem with him. 6 months ago, Laura and Tom got engaged. Since then, they've been living together with their respective children. To this point, everything seemed to be going well. Max got along with Oven and Emma, and Laura said that Tom was a good stepfather. However, a couple of months ago, Laura started hinting that I should do more financially, because now Max lives in a household with 2 other children who also need support. First, I didn't pay much attention. I thought maybe she meant collaborating on minor things like extracurricular activities that involved all 3 children. But it soon became clear that her expectations went much further. Laura mentioned that since Max is part of a shared household with Oven and Emma, it would be unfair if they had fewer opportunities, just because their father isn't in the picture. Basically, she expected me to contribute financially to the activities and needs of Tom's children. The first time she told me, I laughed because honestly I thought it was a joke. When I saw she was serious, I calmly told her that my responsibilities were solely towards Max, that I respected that they as a couple manage their own finances. Since then, this has escalated. Laura accuses me of being selfish, and Tom even sent messages insinuating that I don't care about my son's emotional well-being. Because according to him, Max might feel affected if he sees that his step-siblings have fewer opportunities. I want the best for Max, but I don't think financing someone else's children is part of my responsibilities. It's a complicated dilemma because I want to maintain a good relationship with Laura for Max's sake. But I also have to draw a clear line. What worries me most is that this situation could affect my son, who has started asking questions like, "Why can't you help Oven and Emma date one?" A lawyer steps in. First, thank you to everyone who commented and gave me advice. It was reassuring to know that I'm not the only one who thinks this situation is completely unfair. However, things got even more complicated after my initial post. So here's the first update a few days after our last conversation. Laura brought up the subject again, this time more directly. She called to ask me specifically to cover part of the cost of a summer camp for all 3 children, Max, Oven, and Emma. The camp was quite expensive, something I could afford for Max alone, definitely not for 3 children. I told her that Max could go to camp without a problem, and that I was willing to cover his share, as I always have. That's when Laura lost her patience. She accused me of being petty and selfish, because according to her the 3 children have developed a close bond, and it would be devastating for Oven and Emma to be left out while Max has fun at camp. She insisted that I was ignoring the family dynamic, and that by not helping, I was fostering an unequal environment in Max's home. I tried to explain to her as calmly as possible that my financial responsibilities are towards my son, not her fiancé's children. I reminded her that Tom has his own obligation as a father, and that they should both work together to manage the needs of their blended family. This was not well received. Shortly after our conversation, I started receiving messages from Tom. They were interesting to say the least. Initially, they were passive-aggressive things like, "I hope you can reflect and realize how your actions impact your children and their environment. As a father, I would do anything to make sure my children feel supported in every way." I ignored the messages at first, but then they became more direct. Accusing me of not being a good example for Max. One said something like, "Oven and Emma admire Max a lot. Do you really want to be the reason they feel they are less important?" This last message left me furious, because I felt he was trying to manipulate me emotionally using Max as an excuse. I didn't respond because I didn't want to fuel the drama, but I realized that I needed to set clear boundaries, not only with Laura, but also with Tom. Meanwhile, Max began to notice that something was going on. During his last visit, he casually asked me, "Why aren't Evan and Emma going to camp? What if there's a way they could all go together?" It was clear that Laura and Tom had mentioned the subject to him, which bothered me, because I don't want Max to be in the middle of these discussions. I told Max that I would love for him to go to camp, and that I will always do everything possible to support him, but that it's not up to me to decide what Oven and Emma do. He seemed to accept the answer, but I couldn't help feeling guilty, even though I know I shouldn't. To be honest, this situation is wearing me down. I don't want Max to think that I don't care about his family on his mom's side, but I'm also not going to allow myself to be manipulated into taking on responsibilities that are not mine. Date 2. My lawyer confirmed what I already suspected. I have no financial obligation to Oven or Emma, now or in the future, regardless of their relationship with Max, or how Laura and Tom manage their finances. He recommended that I keep all communication on this subject in writing and avoid heated discussions that could escalate. He also assured me that any attempt by Laura to modify our child support agreement would be unfounded. As long as I continue to fulfill my current obligations, which I have done without fail. This information in mind, I decided to set a clear boundary with Laura. I sent her a long and calm message where I reaffirmed that my priority is Max, and that I will always be willing to cover his needs and activities. However, I made it clear that I cannot and will not assume financial responsibility for Oven and Emma. I also respectfully asked her not to involve Max in these matters, as I believe it is unfair for him to feel pressure to take sides in something that is not his concern. Laura's response was, in a word, explosive. She told me that I was acting in a legalistic way, that I was incapable of seeing the big picture. According to her, I'm ignoring how the dynamics of her home affect Max emotionally. She even hinted that my lack of support could cause Max to feel isolated or resentful towards me in the future. Not satisfied with that, Laura and Tom started using Max in a more direct way. During our last call, Laura mentioned that Max had made comments about how Oven and Emma felt they weren't good enough because they couldn't participate in the same activities as him. This infuriated me because it was obvious they were using Max as a tool to pressure me. I wanted to confront this manipulation immediately, so I talked to Max during our next week together. It was a delicate conversation because I didn't want to put him in an uncomfortable position, but I felt it was important to clarify things. I told him something like, "Max, I will always be here for you, and I will do everything I can. So you have the best, but I also want you to know that what Oven and Emma do or don't do is not up to me. Their parents are the ones who make those decisions. You don't have to worry about that or feel bad." Max seemed relieved, but he also confessed that his mom and Tom had talked to him about how the family needs to work together, and that sometimes he felt he should ask them for fewer things so that Oven and Emma wouldn't feel bad. This broke my heart because he was clearly carrying an emotional weight that didn't belong to him. I assured him that he would never have to stop enjoying what he has the right to do, just because other people can't. I also told him that he can always talk to me if anything makes him uncomfortable. Since that conversation, Max has been calmer, but I can't help but feel angry at Laura and Tom for putting him in this position. Fortunately, I think our relationship is still strong. I will do everything possible so that doesn't change. For now, I'm following my lawyer's advice. I keep all communication in writing and don't respond to provocations. Laura seems to have reduced the direct demands, but I know this isn't over. I appreciate any advice on how to handle interactions with Tom, because it's clear he doesn't plan on backing down in this situation. Update 3: Tom takes it to social media. Hi community. Here I am with another update because, as expected, the situation hasn't calmed down completely. Been a few weeks since the last direct confrontation with Laura, but I feel that the conflict has taken a more subtle form, though no less harmful. After the conversation I had with Max, things between us seemed calmer. He started to appear more relaxed during his time with me, and stopped making comments about Oven and Emma, or about the things it would be nice for everyone to do together. I thought maybe Laura and Tom had decided to back down with the manipulation, but as usual, that was too optimistic. During our last week together, Max mentioned something that set off my alarms again. We were having dinner when he casually said, "Mom said that sometimes you have to make sacrifices for the family. Do you think so, Dad?" I tried to answer carefully because this clearly came from a conversation at Laura's house. I told him that sometimes you have to make sacrifices for the people you love, but that doesn't mean you have to carry everything. I explained that each family finds its way of working as a team, but that it's always important to talk things over with the adults, so you don't feel pressured. Max didn't say much after that, but I could see he was processing my words. It was painful to realize that Laura and Tom were still pressuring him indirectly, using ideas about family, so that he would feel he should act as a mediator or sacrifice himself for his step-siblings. As if that wasn't enough, Tom decided to take the matter to a new level: social media. A few days ago, a mutual friend sent me a screenshot of a post Tom had made on Facebook. Said something like, "Nothing is more painful than seeing someone who should be a role model turn their back on their family. Children deserve equality and love, #priorities, #family. Although he didn't mention me directly, it was clearly aimed at me. The worst part was that some of the comments were from distant relatives and acquaintances criticizing me, saying things like it's a shame when parents don't take responsibility or children shouldn't have to pay for the mistakes of adults. I'm not a person who gets involved in social media drama, so I didn't respond. But this caused several relatives to write to me directly asking if it was true that I was refusing to help Max's new siblings. I had to explain the situation to those closest to me and block others who clearly just wanted to give their opinion without knowing anything. What frustrates me most about this situation is that Tom is painting me as the villain, when the reality is that he should be financially responsible for his own children. He doesn't seem to understand or care about the impact all this could have on Max. I've decided to take a more proactive approach to protect Max from all this drama. On the one hand, I'm strengthening my relationship with him so he knows he can always trust me. I've started to get more involved in his school and sports activities, making sure he feels my constant support. On the other hand, I'm documenting everything that happens from Laura and Tom's messages to the conversations I've had with Max. I don't want to be paranoid, but I feel that having a record can be useful if this escalates legally. For now, I'm trying to stand firm without being confrontational. However, I know this is not the end. Laura and Tom seem determined to include me in their financial dynamic. And although I refuse to give in, each day feels like a new emotional challenge. Date 4, the threat of court. If I thought Tom's social media post was the lowest point they could reach, I was wrong. Since my last update, things have escalated in ways I never imagined. And I'm honestly emotionally exhausted. A week ago, Laura contacted me again by text message. She asked me to cover the costs of school uniforms for all 3 children. According to her, Oven and Emma need new uniforms, but buying for all 3 at the same time would be a financial burden that she and Tom cannot fully assume. She explained that if I paid for Max and the other 2 children at the same time, it would be more fair and would prevent Oven and Emma from feeling excluded. I was no longer surprised by this request, but it bothered me deeply. I replied directly but calmly, "Laura, I understand that managing a blended family can be complicated, but my financial responsibilities are solely towards Max. I am more than willing to cover his needs as I always have. However, Oven and Emma are not my responsibility. That is something you and Tom must handle together." Her response was almost immediate and she didn't hold back. "Do you really think it's fair that Max has everything while his siblings don't? Do you think that doesn't affect their relationships? Maybe it would be better for a judge to decide if your idea of being a good father is really enough." The threat of taking me to court was the last straw. I decided not to respond further and forwarded everything to my lawyer. He assured me that Laura has no legal basis to modify the child support agreement, especially since I comply on time and Max has never lacked anything. Not satisfied with that, Tom decided to go even further. During the exchange with Laura, Tom sent me a message that started with a passive-aggressive tone and ended up being openly hostile. The most worrying part was when he wrote, "You are the type of person who will make their child grow up resentful. I hope you are ready to deal with the consequences when Max understands how selfish you have been." That's when I decided to block Tom on all communication channels. There's no reason for him to be directly involved with me, especially in that way. If he needs to talk about anything related to Max, he should do it through Laura. Unfortunately, this situation is also affecting Max. During his last visit, I noticed he was quieter than usual. When I asked him if something was wrong, he simply said, "Mom says you're angry with her." "And Tom, is that true?" I tried to explain to him simply that I'm not angry, but that there are things we don't agree on. That doesn't mean we can't continue to be good parents to him. Max seemed to accept my answer, but he still looks somewhat worried. What breaks my heart is that I know Laura and Tom are using Max to try to manipulate me. They are putting him in the middle of a situation that shouldn't be his. My priority remains to protect him from all this tension, but I can't control what Laura and Tom tell him when he's with them. After this last series of events, my lawyer suggested sending a formal letter to Laura, making it clear that any attempt to modify our child support agreement, or to use Max as a tool to obtain additional financial support, will not be tolerated. He also recommended that I document any future communication to protect myself, in case they decide to take this further. For now, I'm focusing on strengthening my relationship with Max and making sure he knows he can talk to me about anything. I'm considering seeking family therapy for him, so he has a safe space where he can process his emotions without feeling like he has to choose between his parents. Final update, legal intervention, and the immediate effect. Following my lawyer's advice, we sent a formal letter to Laura. It clearly established the boundaries. My financial obligations are exclusively towards Max. Any attempt to use Max as an intermediary or to pressure him emotionally will be taken seriously as a violation of his well-being. All communication on sensitive issues must be in writing to avoid misunderstandings. If necessary, there will be further legal action. Tone of the letter was firm but not aggressive. We wanted to make it clear that I am not willing to give in, that my priority continues to be Max's well-being. Laura's initial reaction was indignation. She sent me a message full of reproaches, saying that I was damaging the family dynamic, and that I was incapable of thinking about the big picture. However, my lawyer recommended that I not respond, and although it was difficult, I followed his advice. Interestingly, after a few days, Laura changed her tone. She sent me a more conciliatory message, saying that she didn't want this conflict to affect Max, and that she would try to handle things differently. It was a small step but progress nonetheless. After noticing that Max was still showing some concern about the situation, I decided to enroll him in family therapy sessions. At first I wasn't sure how he would take it, but it turned out to be a good decision. Therapist helped us, Max and me, understand how to better manage our conversations and establish a safe space for him to express what he feels without fear that it will cause problems between the adults. During one of the sessions, Max expressed that it bothered him when he felt he had to be the bridge between his mom Tom and me. He said that although he wanted Oven and Emma to be happy, he also wanted to be able to enjoy things without feeling guilty. These words confirmed to me that the pressure Laura and Tom were exerting had impacted him more than I thought. The therapist gave us tools to handle this situation and helped us strengthen our relationship. Max seems much more relaxed. I am doing everything possible to make him feel that his only job as a child is to be happy. Since the legal intervention and therapy, the situation with Laura and Tom has changed. Although I don't think they completely agree with me, it seems they have accepted that I will not assume financial responsibility for Oven and Emma. The requests have ceased completely, and communication with Laura is now strictly limited to Max-related issues. Tom, for his part, seems to have withdrawn from the conflict. I don't know if it was because of my lawyer's letter or because Laura asked him to step back, but I haven't received any messages or hints from him again. Even the social media drama has disappeared. This has been one of the most difficult challenges I have faced as a father. Throughout all of this, I learned how important it is to set clear boundaries, not only to protect myself, but also to protect Max. I understand that managing a blended family is not easy. That doesn't mean the burden should fall on someone who is not part of that equation. My relationship with Max remains strong, and I believe this whole process has brought us even closer. It has also made me reflect on my own role as a father and how I can continue to support him as he navigates this complex family dynamic. Thanks to this experience, I learned that sometimes being firm is not being selfish. It is simply protecting what is fair. I am relieved that things are improving, and I hope we can maintain this stability in the long term. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the next story.